Isra and Mi'raj, two miraculous journeys in one miraculous night. The story of this journey is widely known as the Prophet ﷺ being transported to Masjid Al-Aqsa.
The night journey, which Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in chapter 17, Surah Al-Isra, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan. And the Prophet went there, whether this took place before the ascension to the heavens or after. There is a difference of opinion among scholars.
Muslims believe that one of the miracles attributed to the Islamic Prophet Muhammad is the miracle of the Isra and the Mi'raj. The Isra and Mi'raj, or the night journey and the ascension of Prophet Muhammad, Muslims believe was a miraculous occurrence during which the Prophet traveled from Mecca to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem before ascending to heaven, all in one night. Isra is the night journey from Mecca to the Masjid Al-Aqsa, and Mi'raj is the journey from the Masjid Al-Aqsa to the heavens. I will present my arguments to prove that these two events or alleged miracles are nothing but a mere myth. Today and in this video, I will debunk the Isra journey, and in the next video, I will debunk the Mi'raj part. Let's start. Before I start, my channel analytics still show that 70% of you guys watching this channel have not yet subscribed to the channel. Please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button right now before you continue watching. If there is one way you can support the growth of this channel, it is by subscribing. So let's delve in. Let's start by examining the Isra story. Are there any evidence for such an event taking place? How did we know that Prophet Muhammad was taken on this Isra journey? Well, the primary and most significant evidence and source that believers rely on for the Isra miracle of the Prophet Muhammad is the fact that it was mentioned in the Quran. That is in the first verse of Surah Al-Isra, Surah number 17, which states, "Exalted is he who took his servant by night from Al-Masjid Al-Haram to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, whose surroundings we have blessed, to show him of our signs. Indeed, he is all-hearing, all-seeing. Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-Masjid al-Haram ila al-Masjid al-Aqsa." What do early Muslim scholars know about this alleged Isra journey? The first thing I want to point out is that the early Muslim scholars who came decades after the Prophet's time, when they came to explain the details of that miracle, they differed significantly on whether the Isra happened physically or spiritually. They didn't have consensus about whether the Prophet went on this journey by the flesh or just in the spirit. So right from the start, I find it troubling to believe such a miracle, as there is a major inconsistency between those closest to the events who couldn't agree on the details. To me, that is already a very suspicious start to an alleged miracle. You as a believer might argue that while the scholars disagreed on the nature of the Isra, physically or spiritually, they didn't disagree on the fact that it occurred. That is the believer's mindset. However, the normal way of thinking is when narrators disagree on the details of any story, it casts doubt on the story itself. For instance, if we are investigating the murder of a famous person, and some witnesses say that he was stabbed while others say he was poisoned, it is natural to doubt the murder story itself. Maybe he wasn't murdered and he committed suicide. Or perhaps he wasn't killed at all and fled the country and the rest is staged. If you put your beliefs aside, such discrepancies in details cast doubt on the core of the story, whether it's a religious narrative or not. This is basic logic when assessing stories handed down from people who didn't even witness the events themselves. Neither have we. The second reason I cannot consider this particular verse as a reference for a miracle attributed to Prophet Muhammad is that when interpreting it in that way, it stands in contradiction with verse 90 to 93 of the same surah. In verse 90 of the same surah, the non-believers challenged the Prophet. They say to him, "We will never believe in you until you cause a spring to gush forth from earth for us, or until you have a house of gold, or you ascend to heaven, and even then we will not believe in your ascension until you bring down to us a book that we can read. Now watch what the Prophet tells them in verse 93. He says, "Glory be to my Lord, am I not just a mere human messenger?" In other words, he's saying, why do you expect me to do such things? I'm only a mere human messenger. If the Prophet had indeed performed the miracle of Isra as described in the first verse and ascended to the heavens in the Mi'raj as well on the same night, he wouldn't have responded by saying, "Am I only a human messenger?" Instead, he would have said something like, "Well, I have ascended to the heavens and you're still denying it." This verse, number 93 itself, negates the interpretation of Isra in verse number 1 as a miracle attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. The Quran itself suggests that verse number 1 has a different meaning than to be understood as a miracle attributed to Prophet Muhammad. Thirdly, and most importantly, there are numerous Quranic and non-Quranic evidence suggesting that Prophet Muhammad is not the subject of the first verse of Surah Al-Isra at all. For instance, Surah number 17, now known as Surah Al-Isra, was originally named Surah Bani Israel, the surah about the children of Israel. That was the original name of the surah during the time of the companions and followers of the Prophet, and it predominantly discusses the children of Israel. Go and read the surah for yourself. The naming of the surah as Bani Israel, or children of Israel, was well known among the companions and the early scholars, as mentioned by the prominent Islamic figures like Al-Tabari in his tafsir interpretation and Al-Bukhari in his Sahih. The website portal Islam Q&A also states that naming the surah Bani Israel was the most popular designation during the time of the companions and early followers of Muhammad. When you read the first verse with that in mind, it suddenly makes more sense. When you look at the second verse, it immediately talks about Moses and the children of Israel. This isn't a leap from verse number 1, which you think refers to Prophet Muhammad, to verse number 2 and beyond, which discusses Moses and the children of Israel. If it's not a leap, then who is the subject of the first verse? What is the Isra and who is the one mentioned in this verse? The answer can be found in Surah Al-Dukhan, or Surah number 44, verse number 23. It talks about a servant who was taken on a trip at night and took others with him. Yep, you guessed it. It was no one else other than Moses and the children of Israel. فَأَسْرِ بِعِبَادِي لَيْلًا إِنَّكُمْ مُتَّبَعُونَ, using the exact same words of Surah Al-Isra, verse number 1. Here, God commands Moses to take the children of Israel by night out of Egypt towards the promised land. Surah Al-Shu'ara, or Surah number 26, confirms the same understanding in verse 52. And we inspired Moses, أَسْرِيَ بِعِبَادِي, go on that nightly trip. Therefore, it is not surprising that Surah 17 was originally named Bani Israel, and it begins with the same night journey of Moses and the children of Israel. It was never a miracle of Muhammad. But unfortunately, the first verse of Isra was taken out of context by scholars who came decades later, weaving hadiths and stories around it to create a supposed miracle for the Prophet of Islam. You as a believer might want to object and challenge me, asking, but did the Prophet Moses journey from Al-Masjid al-Haram? Isn't Al-Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, thus the verse must refer to Prophet Muhammad? Well, my friend, I'm merely quoting verses from the Quran. Let's see. The surah was originally named Bani Israel, and the Quran mentions multiple times this night journey of Moses and the children of Israel from Egypt to Jerusalem, which later became known as Al-Masjid al-Aqsa during the Islamic era. The term Al-Masjid al-Haram doesn't necessarily refer to Mecca. Let me explain. The term Al-Masjid al-Haram was used to refer to various places for different reasons. For instance, several mosques in Egypt during the Mamluk period were called Al-Masjid al-Haram, meaning the forbidden mosque, like the Sultan al-Mu'ayyad Mosque and the Sultan al-Ghuri Mosque. These were also known as Al-Masjid al-Haram, even though they are in Egypt, not in Mecca. Furthermore, the place of worship for the children of Israel in Egypt which God provided them as a sanctuary during the journey to the promised land, is described in the Quran in Surah Al-Qasas, Surah number 28, verse 57. And they say, if we follow the guidance with you, we will be snatched from our land. Have we not established for them a safe sanctuary? This safe sanctuary, this same safe place mentioned here in the Quran, was the same place described in the Torah, where God commanded Moses to set boundaries around it, a haram, make it a sacred and secure place for worship, to kneel before God, meaning a place for sujood, Masjid Haram. This is a place in Egypt, not in Mecca. Al-Masjid al-Haram here mentioned in Surah Bani Israel or Surah Al-Isra is referring to a place in Egypt as described by the Torah. And as many other mosques in Egypt, Islamic sources confirming that they were also considered a Masjid Haram. Then from that place in Egypt, God took the children of Israel from this place to the promised land, or Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. So if you read Surah Al-Isra, verse number 1 again, exalted he who took his servant by night from Al-Masjid Al-Haram to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. In that first verse of the surah that was originally called Bani Israel, it makes sense that it is talking about Moses and the children of Israel, not about Muhammad at all. Moses, who, as the Babylonian Talmud says about him, ascended to the heavens and saw wonders on his journey to the sky. Hang on, does that sound familiar? That is indeed the ascension attributed to Prophet Muhammad again in the alleged Mi'raj. But I will leave that to the next episode when we talk about the Mi'raj separately. The next video will be about the Mi'raj story, which is another complete mythical miracle attributed to Prophet Muhammad. But for the sake of this video, I hope you can see clearly that the myth of the Isra journey was never meant about Prophet Muhammad. It was a completely out of context and a Chinese whisper game that over a few decades turned into a fake miracle attributed to the Muslim Prophet. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, please consider supporting my channel on Patreon. The link is on the screen and in the description box below. Until next time, see you on the Mi'raj video.